All right, welcome everybody. Great to have you here. My name's Simon Brown. I'm the CEO and founder of DDSIT. Thank you for joining us on this webinar, Empowering Business Through a Culture of Observability. Just a note, this webinar is being recorded, just so you know. Look, let's start with the who's who on the webinar. So alongside me today, I have Jason Bainham, who's the Enterprise Account Executive from Datadog, and I'm delighted to also have Matthew Joseph, one of our fantastic customers, the Head of Technology and Platforms at Datum. Welcome, guys. Right, so just as we start off, I'll just put a mention in. So we have got a Q&A function in the webinar. So if you have got questions throughout, we will be having a Q&A session at the end. So if you just click on the Q&A at the top, put your question in, and we hope to get there. So the order today will start with myself and our journey and experience of creating a culture of observability. Then on to Jason for sort of a why Datadog for observability, and then Matthew with Datum's journey around observability. All right, let's begin. So I'll just start with a little bit of background on myself. So 30 plus years in the industry. My background is technical, worked through to the role of sort of enterprise infrastructure architect, but I've been off the tools for the last 10 to 12 years. According to my architects, I'm still considered fairly dangerous if I'm allowed to do a technical review. From a DDS perspective, a DDSIT perspective, we're a New Zealand-based MSP and systems integrator. We operate with customers in the mid, large and enterprise sector. And we're really blessed to have lots of New Zealand's favourite brands across most of the industry verticals. We offer managed services across service desk, service management, modern work, on-site field engineering, as well as infrastructure, cloud SRE operations teams. That's really combined with professional services team. We're doing a lot of work at the moment in cloud, predominantly Azure extensively, cloud modernisation migrations, but also Intune, Windows 11, modern work, lots in the Microsoft space. And of course, we're a Datadog Gold partner. So observability and the culture of it has always been near and dear to me. When I started the company back in 2003, it was to create incredible customer experiences in IT. And that desire today has certainly not changed. But what has changed, as we've seen, I suppose the architecture of services has changed dramatically. The move to cloud services, integrations, SaaS platforms, the landscape has certainly not got simpler. And I know Jason's going to elaborate a little bit more on this. What it's meant is we've needed to adopt our approach from being one of monitoring and alerting, up, down, broken, or even proactive monitoring, it's about to break, to a place where we really understand the entire customer experience. The reality is we want to know what's actually happening all the way from the customer to the back end. And of course, in there are lots of layers of what people want to see, different views, and different people care about different things. Datadog for us has been one of the most important platforms for DDS and our customers for the last 4 to 5 years to do just this. So today my work sees me more focused on working with CIOs and CTOs to understand and support their roadmaps. And one of the conversations that's constantly coming up is I need to know how my services are performing, what's the customer experience. And so that really leads us on to, so what is observability? And how can I create a culture around it? So observability is, I'm going to define really here, is the ability to see the performance of any given service with the ability to draw right down to all the components that make that service up. And so really what I want to do now is speak into why I believe creating a culture of observability is so important. And also, I suppose at a more of a practical level, where can you start and how can in building a culture? So first things first, the first step is establishing the why. So this needs to really come in from the top, and really it's a case of saying, what is the real value of observability to your business? What can observability bring? The why needs to speak to what people care about individually in their roles, but also it needs to link to what the business cares about and needs, which, funnily enough, is typically the customer experience. The fact is, if you don't have a why, there is no purpose and people will never get on board for the journey. The next thing is you need someone to be a champion of the why, but their job is not to be the gatekeeper or the one everyone goes to and sees, but really more to be the evangelist to the value, to encourage and support and build the capability of observability inside an organization. The absolute key here with this internal champion, they need to be able to talk tech, but they must be able to talk business. If you just have somebody who's one way or the other, they're not going to fit everyone. So that's a really key piece. The next piece is keeping it simple. So you must keep it simple and easy to make it easy for others to onboard and get going with observability. And I wanted to tell you a quick story and an example of that, and I'll give credit to Benjamin Pyle, who was actually a presenter at the recent Datadog Dash conference I attended in New York. And the story, which we'll all be able to relate to, is going shopping. And so here's the story. So you're hungry and you want to make dinner. So you decide to go to the supermarket. Now, if you're like me and you've walked in hungry and you've not decided what you're going to have for dinner, the decision becomes quickly overwhelming. What shall I cook? What's the recipe? What ingredients do I need? They're scattered. They're all over the place. Versus, I will just pick up a simple meal kit. The meal kit's got the recipe on the back. It's got all the ingredients inside, and you're ready to go. And I suppose when you're starting out with an observability practice, that analogy, I think, is very powerful from the point of view of you want a simple meal kit for people to adopt initially. And so it will contain all the basic observability characteristics, which can then be simply applied to your services or workloads. Of course, once you get familiar with the platform and become a bit more adventurous, you can add additional ingredients and you can build on those things and create your entirely new recipes for others to try. That's really where the next step comes in. Once you've got it available to you, it's really about embedding observability in your current process. So what I regularly see inside organizations is standard processes, and those vary from being exceptional to being interesting is probably the fair way of putting it, where essentially if you look at things like onboarding. So again, when a platform or service is being onboarded, where's the meal kit that can be brought out? So you can start simple. We're seeing this actually now integrated from practically as infra as code. So a lot of the base of observability, service monitoring, etc., is actually literally as something is spun up, it's auto deployed. And this is critical if you're thinking about your platforms that auto scale. You want that observability to be there by default. The next is embracing the insights. So the beauty is with the platform like Datadog for observability is it's really just not for the techies. I think this is really what set it apart for us, that the business dashboards that can be created are really amazing. And so this is a case of you need to celebrate the insights you're seeing and actually showcase them inside the business and also into the technical teams. It's interesting when you actually demonstrate and show the value to the business, because the next question is, hey, what else can you show me? What else can we build? And so just a real encouragement here that executive sponsorship is key to promotion here, like most things. And then finally, measure and improve. So a culture needs to be maintained, regularly celebrated and enhanced. And so really the opportunity here, and again, this champion comes into play, is to actually build out a backlog that others can see and look at and basically have regular stand-ups where you're looking at, hey, what's next on our observability journey? What do we not need anymore? Because actually the dashboards of all the pictures have given us the story and we don't need them anymore. Having this backlog and fostering and growing will really create enormous value for your business and your teams. All right, that's enough from me. I will now hand over to Jason. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon, and hi, everyone. As Simon mentioned, my name is Jason Bainham. I lead the Datadog business in New Zealand, and a big thank you to both DDS and Datum for the opportunity to come on and talk a bit about Datadog. My conversation with you today is going to be talking about the bedrock of building a culture of observability, and that's the tooling that organizations adopt to view their environments. So let me tell you a bit about Datadog. I was in a customer meeting yesterday and they asked us to compare and contrast monitoring versus observability. As Simon mentioned, that base level monitoring, up, down, broken, not broken, has really evolved. And I think this slide, it's a Gartner slide, underpins the reasons why we're evolving. All of you on the call, your organization will be somewhere on each of these journeys. In terms of how you're adopting amounts of technology or types of technology, moving from monolithic environments with a few vendors that are supporting you into a diverse cloud environment with lots of open source and lots of SaaS that will require you to pivot away from physical hardware that you can touch and control in your environment into cloud instances, containerized workloads, serverless and microservices. And of course, the great goal being that instead of doing waterfall projects that maybe iterate and release once a year or even less frequently for some organizations I've come across, into a much, much quicker pace of release to respond to business requirements. And of course, you'll be bringing a lot more people on the journey instead of having siloed organizations with operational and development quite separate, and security and business even further removed. Over time, organizations are looking to move to DevOps, to DevSecOps, and of course include the business in that. So as we go through each of these journeys, we start seeing complexity, change, areas that we need to address as a business. And that's where Datadog comes in that it solves for this level of complexity. Datadog as an organization was custom built by two gentlemen, one a head of operations, one a head of development at a large company in the US. And they really wanted to find a way that their two teams could have a common set of language, a common set of tools, and a way to collaborate to get rid of the IT coat of arms and the he said, she said arguments. Datadog has been purpose built for that from day one, and it covers all of these items that you see on the slide and more besides. And it's been a tremendously successful organization in the 12 years of operation. This slide was put together only last week. Since then, we've released our investor pack to market in line with our Q2 results. And the numbers are well over 28,000 organizations are trusting Datadog with their observability requirements. And they range from small organizations through to some of these large organizations that you see on the slide. We have over 250 customers in New Zealand, again, from relatively small digital native startups all the way through to the largest enterprises and government departments in the country. One of the reasons that we're seeing a real pace of growth in our platform and adoption of our platform is the amount of investment that we're putting into R&D. So 30% of revenue that comes into Datadog is invested straight back into the platform. And so we're seeing that as a response to customer requests, but also to big bets that we're seeing in the marketplace and in terms of where the market is going and the types of things that our customers will be needing in years to come. So I want to tell you about the platform in its entirety, because when we started, we were very much that event platform for organizations to monitor and operate and optimize their environments, and it's still an absolute core part of our business. So whilst we started in observability, we've really built this environment out. Our infrastructure monitoring capability ranges from VM and on-prem environments into modern containerized serverless workloads. It associates things like network monitoring, APM, synthetic monitoring, and an area that we think we have a real competitive advantage is in log management, where we have a set of tooling that is purpose built to cost optimize customers' environments. So in that core three pillars of observability, monitoring and operating, it's their bread and butter, and it's the place that most organizations start their journey around observability. The next step will be looking to optimize environments. And so we've built a series of products that allow customers to do that by continuously profiling their applications for performance, by doing things like monitoring and optimizing database queries, and starting to get into areas that are really important at this time: cloud cost management and data streams monitoring. We're seeing a huge uptick in cloud cost management right now as we allow organizations to understand the nature of their cloud spend and how they can potentially optimize it. So that's your starting point, those three pillars of observability. But as we've evolved the product, our customers and ourselves have seen opportunities to dive into adjacent parts of the business. And And one huge part of our portfolio these days is security. The data that we gather for observability is really unique in a security context in that it understands the application from end to end. And so that allows us an opportunity to start rolling out some really significant enhancements around cloud security, posture management, around cloud SIEM, software composition analysis, and the ability to obfuscate and redact data as it comes into a cloud platform. So we're starting to see real adoption for security. But we also want to make sure that we're catering for the shift left, our developer cohort, as we move into a DevOps environment. So we've built out really in-depth tools for this cohort to allow them to bring testing into their pipelines much earlier, to do it on a continuous basis, really optimizing that testing experience and creating a much faster release cycle for customers, but also visibility into the health and performance of pipelines at an enterprise level. At the other end, we've pivoted to allow organizations to understand how their users are experiencing their web or mobile applications. So we allow real user monitoring. We can show where customers are having issues, frustration signals. We can do session replay to get really granular in terms of how users have interacted with our mobile assets. And more than anything, we're doing this on a wholly correlated basis. So the platform is end-to-end correlated. So that user that we're seeing having a frustration signal at our front end, we can map all the way through the infrastructure, through the application, and bring along the associated error logs as well. And we underpin all of this with really in-depth now cloud service management capability. Matthew is going to talk at depth in his journey towards putting in place things like service catalog, but we have capabilities around incident management, case management, and also resource cataloging as well. So that's the platform in its entirety, and it's growing at a really fast pace. What it allows us to do is, for our customers, build out a huge breadth of capability, more telemetry types across more things, 700 out of the box integrations that allow you to get full visibility of your environment, but also really deep in terms of the data that we retain for our customers. And again, that point I made previously, that automatic correlation across the entire platform, which really is the secret sauce of driving efficiency and observability. And this is the platform in its entirety. And there's just a couple of things to talk about here, and that the horizontal bars along the bottom are the platform services. These are non-tariffed. These are how you consume the service, from the integration, the fact that we can unify metrics, logs, and traces, through to dashboarding, integrations, the agent that you may choose to deploy, and then into anomaly prediction, detection, and proactive alerting with that watchdog tooling, which allows organizations to get a real jump into their observability journey. The vertical bars are the different parts of the product set that you get tariffed for. It's a SaaS platform, and you turn on the products that make sense and add value to your organization. As I've suggested, a really good place to start is that 3 pillars of observability, that core place, and then start building out. But we have customers who've started this journey with us at any point on that continuum. And so that's it in entirety. More than happy to take questions from the team afterwards. But from here, I'll hand over to Matthew to give you the real on the ground customer experience of building out not only the platform, but the culture of observability. Matthew.
Thanks, Jason. Let's take control of the slides. All right, and so as Simon alluded to right at the beginning, it's about building that culture of observability along with what Datadog offers as features, which has been so much of a difference to how Datum operates on a day-to-day basis. Before I start, though, I just wanted to quickly give you a few slides about who we are, and then I'll kind of move into what our current usage of Datadog is, and what we see the future usage is going to look like. We are one of New Zealand's largest customer communication businesses. It's a good chance that all of you are attending the webinar are our direct customers or are the businesses that we partner with. And what that means is Datum's impact on communications in New Zealand is really wide and deep in the sense of the domains that we affect. Because of the kind of business that we interact with, we take data security and privacy really seriously, and that's kind of ingrained into our DNA right from the beginning. You'll see here some of the customers that we work with, and they go across the length and breadth of the domains that are available in New Zealand, and that particularly affect all and everyone from a services perspective. And obviously, we have got a very large exposure to government. So if you have participated in census, if you have participated in elections, Datum is a key delivery partner for those agencies. The bit that was kind of key is that we actually take care of that communication operation for the business, so they don't have to worry about it, and we make sure it is secure and reliable. So imagine if your bank is actually promising to you that we will send you your monthly transactions at the end of the month at that particular within plus or minus plus 1 day, then we are the ones who are actually keeping that promise on behalf of your bank to say that's when it's going to show up through all of the different channels that the bank wants to subscribe through. This is both the digital channels, like for example, email, or through physical outputs, which is a letter that's printed and delivered through our delivery partners. And more importantly, we actually also provide the service of creating an archive which stores all these communications so that our businesses and their customers can access this both synchronously and asynchronously. I cannot understate how important it is for us to have this operation secure and reliable and available 24/7. And our partners, DDS, are a key player in making sure that we provide that security to our customers that, yes, the service will be available. Okay. From another perspective, from a print perspective, we actually maintain 2 sites in Auckland and Christchurch. This is from a BCP perspective as well. For example, when the Auckland floods happened, we were able to migrate a lot of our communication loads to Christchurch, and so on. And so that's of enormous comfort to our customers because we can ensure that your print outputs are not impacted by, let's say, a particular event in a particular location. Now, if you can imagine, all of the underlying infrastructure that supports this is in the cloud, and we kind of expect that same kind of reliability to kind of occur for that infrastructure as well. And obviously, observability is key to that. Before I kind of start off for the Datadog introduction, I just wanted to give a small roadmap of kind of where we have started and where we are heading into. And this is key because when we started working with DDS right at the beginning of 2018, they were a key partner who allowed us to migrate our workloads into Azure Cloud. Now, as is the case with a lot of organizations that are either attempting the move or in that kind of maturity, we've emerged from silos of operation. There's been different ways of looking at observability, including developers, RDPing into machines and looking at logs, and different teams of developers having different approaches to observability. There's never been a common single pane of glass. And as you can imagine, as we consolidate our processes, as we consolidate our partners, as we do things like cloud infrastructure modernization, we want to have a single pane of observability. It just doesn't make sense operationally for us to have to look at different systems in completely different ways. And therefore, the opportunities that a product like Datadog provides are immeasurable from that context. That single pane of glass is invaluable. And to that extent, the roadmap also kind of talks to you about, I mean, like I just said, the cloud infrastructure modernization and the API, business front and on demand. These are all initiatives that we're kind of going through right now. And the way we are kind of reinventing or replatforming ourselves has to kind of ground up look at observability from day one. It's almost giving us that opportunity to say, right, we did that first level, which is the cloud migration with a traditional workload like VMs, for example, but how do we do this better? How do we make the monitoring and logging aspect of our business more effective for our future ways of operation? Now, I'll kind of take you through a quick overview of how we have used Datadog at the moment. And so some of this is no surprise. By the way, I am not going to throw you with multiple graphs or dashboards. Okay, by the time I realized there's so many host names in all of these diagrams and trying to kind of, blacken them out, it was just going to take ages. So I'm going to give you a quick overview, but please feel free to connect with obviously Simon and Jason, when you want to understand about very specific items in here, and we can talk more about those. Obviously, the classic is infrastructure monitoring, right? This is just the bread and butter of a platform like Datadog. And we've been monitoring across all our Azure virtual machines. In fact, this kind of monitoring was very critical to obviously something that was topical, which is the CrowdStrike event. And so when we were affected, not as much as some others were, the DDS team was able to quickly identify which were the servers that were impacted, put in the remedial effort, changes that were suggested at that time, and we could immediately figure out when those servers were back in. And so to us, this is not something that we've just put up out there, and it's not daily, impacting us. It is absolutely supporting not just DDS, but our business to function 24/7. Again, all of the server monitoring involves installing agents on each of those VMs to collect, memory and I/O and network level metrics, and it ships them to the Datadog platform. It makes it very simple. We've got images that automatically get updated all the time, and the Datadog agent also gets updated at the same time. The metrics are of no use unless we set alerts for them. So we have got alerts configured for all our VMs to tell us when there's high CPU usage or high memory usage. Some of our critical platforms that we use, if we see high CPU usage, which is actually not expected or perhaps expected, and we need to make scaling decisions, then these alerts are actually useful. Disk usage, for example, is also monitored, and we've got warning thresholds around 90 and 95% respectively. Obviously, another level of logging is OS and system logging. We've got Windows and Linux collateral within our inventory, and Datadog provides all the standard event-based logging that you can get from an OS and system log. Okay, so this is Windows event logs or Linux journal D logs. You name it, it's all available. We have systems that are both in the cloud and on-premise, connecting to our physical print infrastructure. And it was really important that any kind of network latency that is observed in the system is reported back and alerted. And so we obviously have network performance monitoring. You don't need it across your entire fleet. You need it across key servers. And we have done that. We have actually monitored those key servers to make sure there's no latency or anything that's any unusual behavior that we are seeing around delays is immediately alerted to the DDS teams and therefore us. And obviously, if you've got connectivity issues, it's useful to troubleshoot them. You've got obviously the classic stuff around database monitoring, or systems like ours. Obviously, we've got huge databases depending on the kind of incoming data that we support. So this is more the database server level monitoring, and indeed the actual database monitoring itself. And I'm talking about things like transactions, replication status, query execution times, and so on. So when your developers are actually introspecting right, why did that particular query run so long? You can actually go, and so instead of using SQL Server Management Studio or any of that to actually go connect to the server directly, you can actually use Datadog to look at all the queries that had run and look at the query execution plan, what took so much time, and it actually gives you a graph of how the query was kind of broken down into pieces and kind of what was the specific time involved in each call. What, if anything, what that means is when we start isolating or troubleshooting issues, our go-to destination is always Datadog. We are not expecting our developers to have to RDP into machines or use service-specific clients to kind of get to them. Datadog is that universal window, and it kind of makes that as a first port of call very easy to reach out to. We are setting up Datadog with single sign-on as well. So it is all our users will immediately get access using our organization credentials. So it just makes getting to Datadog seamless, very easy. We've obviously got now, Jason was kind of alluding to how you've got the common pillars and how people are moving to the left and right based on, whether we need the developer experience to get better and the business experience to get better. And so one of the things that we're trying to do now is obviously the application performance monitoring, which is kind of like a core product from Datadog, but we are just, I suppose, nascent users. We've started on that track. It actually helps us trace requests across distributed systems, identify bottlenecks and such. As part of our infrastructure modernization, we are going to be adding more of APM monitoring in there. And we see the value to be multiplied once we start going down that space. What it does, it actually seamlessly integrates Datadog's infrastructure monitoring, which is the stuff that I just talked to you about, along with these requests. So you can actually say, hey, there's been a performance spike on the server, and this was the API request or the actual request that triggered it. And you can line up both these metrics together to see what could be the reason that that particular thing happened. It's fair to say that as we will have collateral, either websites or applications that are public facing. And one of the things that we absolutely wanted to have a look over was Azure Application Gateway, the web application firewall. And Datadog has an amazing view around those kind of services offered by Azure as well. It was just to make sure that we all our core networking services like web applications are always looked at, and are any kind of denial of service attacks or any kind of sniffing is almost immediately monitored and caught and notified to us. Logs from the WAF are also shipped to Datadog, and these are kind of used to generate alerts for both slow requests and high number of bad requests, like I said, for sniffing or spoofing kind of requests. Now, more importantly, all of that current usage is aggregated into dashboards. And Simon talked to them a little bit before. So we've got business users, and a good example, Simon, if you want to kind of explain our service delivery managers and the dashboards that they've got access to.
Yeah, well, thanks, Matthew. Yeah, interesting from the perspective of the service delivery managers at Datum working with the customers. We're getting called by the customer saying how our services are not performing, or there's a potentially a system outage. And so what we've done, and this is quite early on in the journey, put in place business dashboards. So the service delivery managers for each of their clients had their own dashboard with all the services that are important to their customers, all the performance stats. And I suppose what the most interesting part of it is that the dashboards, whilst initially heavily used, enabled the business and also us to see where the challenges, issues were, which we're able to resolve. It's to the point now where the service delivery managers hardly even look at the dashboards because the services are now so reliable, are running all the time, and I suppose this the advancement because of observability in the business service and the outcome to the customer has been quite incredible. So yeah, pretty good news story, Matthew.
Thanks, Simon. But that's classic, right? As our maturity improves, we kind of try and surface as much information as is required to the people. And then we decide, hey, maybe we don't need to surface as much because now we have created an alert and we are dealing with that proactively. And so the need to kind of reactively look at data is no longer existent. But more importantly, and as all of you in the webinar, as you evolve with using Datadog or similar platforms, you would need to have a practice where you actually look at all the collateral that has been created for you, the dashboards, alerts, and logging, and kind of constantly revisit, is this relevant to me anymore? And so that's going back to Simon's initial slide where you measure and check whether some of these metrics are still being used. And if not, let's retire them and make sure that it is not, when you go into a dashboard that's not filled with metrics that overwhelm you, that it has got only exactly what is required for the particular user type that you're catering to. Okay, because that can be the other extreme, that it's full of stuff and it can be intimidating when you go into it first. But if it's got a very narrowed down scope based on the role that you occupy in the organization, it's much more effective that way. And finally, I'm going to talk something about the future usage. You've seen that roadmap of ours, and some of the things that we will definitely head down into our front-end synthetics, real user monitoring. We want to actually look at our public web applications and see what issues customers are facing. Okay, and in terms of synthetics, obviously we want to be able to test and actually create load and see how that load is actually kind of getting into the system, obviously using APM monitoring as well. So it kind of gives you a 360 view, both before and after, of how users have engaged in a test mode and are engaging in an actual production mode, and be able to collect that data. Obviously, we've got a team of devs, and for them, we want to make sure that the developer experience, which is what Jason was alluding to, which is that whole build, deliver, and test mode right on the extreme left, is actually looked after. And so one of the first things that we'll start off with is CI monitoring, and which is linking into Azure DevOps and making sure our build pipelines are running healthy, and that we can actually get any kind of build errors and notifications right from the Datadog pane. Again, like I said, that single pane of glass view across all our infrastructure and the supporting ecosystem is useful, instead of necessarily having to go to Azure DevOps or all of those sites to kind of get that access. We talked about infrastructure modernization, and so AKS monitoring, API monitoring are super critical and important to us going forward. Service catalog is something new that Datadog is offering, and we actually want to say that all of the stuff that you saw in our current usage, which is around infrastructure monitoring, NPM and all of that, they all aggregate into services, and we want to actually say, right, which service has been impacted as a result of the underlying failure in either a host or the network or whatever. And that would be key to us to kind of get a very high level view of our services. And finally, business layer dashboards. We have seen how Simon and his team have facilitated us with creating some business layer, but we want to extend that all the way forward with the business getting more, incoming views about our APIs, what kind of data is coming through, what kind of requests are customers sending more of as opposed to less of, and so on. Okay, that was it. Simon, it is back to you.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Jason. Right, Julie has dropped in the chat everyone's contact details. So really happy to connect after this with any of you on the webinar. About any questions around Datadog observability, culture. Love to chat. So that's in there. I'm really going to open up now for questions. So please use the Q&A function. That'd be great. We've had a question in from James. Hi guys, has Datadog results affected the business? I'll start and then probably hand to Matthew. I think probably that example I was talking about before, James, with the service delivery manager for Datum specifically. At the end of the day, the customers want services to be delivered. They want them available. They want them performant. And so providing layers of observability that actually help you dive down into the detail to see where the issues or challenges are has massive impacts from the point of your customer reputation and detail. Matthew, any more on that from your perspective?
I've already shown you that example of how it has impacted from a incident perspective, and that CrowdStrike example that I was telling you about. But like I said, the future for us is not just incident management and being able to troubleshoot, but it's shifting left, as Jason indicated, to see more of our processes from the beginning and making sure we never have to kind of reactively have to deal with things. We can be proactive and even address a lot of these issues right from the beginning, as opposed to having to deal with them after the fact.
I know our team's worked with your dev team, Matthew. Another example, sort of, I suppose, from a potential business impact, or we're talking releases or new drops of code. Datadog can be obviously applied across your, in fact, encouraged to really across your dev and UAT platforms from the perspective of dropping new versions of code. And if you know, depending on your release cadences, obviously critical. But to then see, hey, this new version of code, what's the end-to-end performance? What does this mean from a customer experience point of view? So had an example of that. We worked with the team. We could see, and we could literally within, I'm saying moments, I think it was a minute, literally go, right, here's the liner code for the database query. That's actually now, time made the performance 4 times worse. But let's fix that code. Boom, away we go. So immediate value at before it hits production, which is the best thing. So that's another classic example. Any more questions, guys? Please feel free to put some questions in. All the contact details are in the chat now. That's great. Jason, so I suppose from a Datadog perspective across New Zealand predominantly, obviously you are I suppose been in country for the last year. What are you seeing as far as actually this culture sort of I suppose spanning across sort of typically sort of larger organisations or even in smaller ones?
Well, I think probably my key observation would be that the culture piece is just hugely important. And again, that concept of structuring it, where maybe you have a central team running observability, but you have a central person within that idea of a champion who goes out and really evangelizes observability across the business is so crucial. As we think about shifting left or moving into security, then we're actually talking to completely different stakeholders, and to bring them along the journey requires firstly confidence that they maybe they're not taking a leap of faith, but they're actually doing something that's going to add value to their life and deliver great results for them. And so the way that you get there is by creating that culture and showing what good looks like with the results that you're driving from Datadog. And I'm sure Matthew, as you push to your development team, that you'll be going through that process of showing them that great results and getting their adoption enthusiastically, as opposed to imposing a standard and forcing them down that path.
100%. I mean, it is something that they need to buy into, because otherwise they wouldn't be enthusiastic about following it, because you could kind of put as many dashboards in front of them, but if they don't own the dashboards and the metrics that they see in them or the improvements that they want to achieve by putting those dashboards and those metrics, it just stays there and doesn't evolve from there.
I think one of the things I suppose we've observed over the years of using Datadog and partly our choice of selecting it as our platform. It's what we use for all of our managed services customers. It's our go-to for observability. Is really the ease of adoption. Now, I'm not saying it's nothing's ever easy, a new platform and new tools to get used to, but I think the ability to, first of all, the training and the what's available from a Datadog perspective to actually get you up and onboarded, but I suppose just how simple it can be made from the point of view, sort of tying back a little bit to the meal kit analogy I gave, where a lot of it can just be there by default, and as the interest is gained, and particularly when you get that champion, but then you get other pockets of the business, particularly in the whether it be the dev space or the business end, going, hey, how can I see these views? How can I get involved? How can I see more? It's pretty amazing. I was recently over at the Dash conference in New York, and what we're seeing with obviously AI interlaying into observability is next level, from the point of view of actually I saw some examples where not only was it saying here's the issue with your code as far as performance, but actually here's the code you need to actually use. So that's where things are heading. I mean, we all know AI is coming across most technology stacks, but great to see Datadog's investment with that going on as well. So excellent. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, Matthew, Jason, anything more before we wrap?
No, just thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of the webinar. I hope the attendees have learned something. Do feel free to email me. I did note that in the slides we did have the wrong phone number for me. I don't have a US-based phone number, so please just use my email in the first instance for anyone wanting to follow up. Be glad to hear from you. Excellent. Matthew?
Yeah. If you want to hear more about our specific use cases, please reach out. We are on the interweb, datum.co.nz, and you can hit the contact button and reach out to us. And yeah, we're happy to kind of show through some of these actual use cases in more detail. And each of them can be a 1 hour conversation by itself. So there's huge amount of work that has happened in that space. Thanks, DDS.
Thank you, Matthew. Jason, thanks, guys. Just really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. A big shout out to Julie and Maren for setting up the webinar as well, and everything you've done. So thanks, everyone. Look forward to connecting. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.